This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
I used to say this with Adam, but it happens even more frequently with you, Gary, is that some of the best material is while we're waiting to jump on. One of the ones, I'll recreate it. You can jump in if I am a revisionist historian, but I was asking Gary if we got our reasonable doubt swag because I want to, contrary to some of the comments, we're going to start giving it out each week. And I said, Gary, you can characterize what you said about the comments.
Yeah, sure. You know, I've been squarely involved in figuring out the swag, and you asked if it had come in yet, and I said I don't know the answer to that, and you said okay. Okay, well, which recent comment is your favorite so that we can pick and we'll sick them on the person who's ordering the swag? And I said, I don't read the comments and I will not be starting. So this is going to be squarely a you problem. So you can pick your favorite comment and then sick them on Lucas, who is a friend of the show who is maybe not as publicized as normal. But yeah, that's going to be a you department there, Mark.
Is there a reason you don't read the comments, GPS?
Because I get enough of it from you reading them and then recreating them to me about my eyes or my, you know, all my little shortcomings. You know, I have better things to do on Christmas Eve than to read disparaging remarks about me from people in their mom's basement. Keyboard warriors, as some may call them. I just, you know, no thanks.
The amount of joy that this discussion gives me is probably outsized, but thank you.
The amount of joy that it gives you is also why I don't read the comments. It's, you know, your delight and the look on your face right now and the literal belly laughs. You're holding your chest right now. The happiness that you get is exactly why I stay out of the comments section. And feel free to hit me on Twitter. I don't read that shit either. So.
Well, I have a career that has been marked at various times by representing people who either one constituency loves or hates. I used to say times I get cheered on, other times people are praying that I get cancer. So it's a
And look, I will say, Mark, I'm better at it than I was when I started, you know, 10 or 11 years ago, being in a semi-public sphere. At that point, you know, I had a very hard time dealing with disparaging remarks. I'm better at it these days, but I am, you know, still 25 years a junior of yours in that sort of a realm. So you're just more seasoned than I am. And one day maybe I'll be a little bit more adept and able to handle it. But at the moment, I got a life to live here and a family to raise. So I stay out of the comments section.
So, you know, we should take that. Maybe that'll be a clip for New Year's resolutions for those who are starting to achieve anything. That here's Gary's kind of aphorism or words to live by in 2024. I love it.
Absolutely.
So speaking of words to live by, one of the big stories this week, legal stories this week, obviously was the Colorado Supreme Court 4-3 decision removing Trump for the ballot, which is a fascinating because when you read that in conjunction with the U.S. Supreme Court declining to do the expedited consideration of the immunity argument by the Jack Smith. So those who aren't in the weeds, Jack Smith had gone to SCOTUS and had asked SCOTUS to basically skip the Court of Appeal, the District Court of Appeal, go straight to the Supreme Court, have the Supreme Court intervene, which there is rare but precedent for. They, in a basically one-line order, Gary may be able to find it, declined to do that. For those of you who want to slam the Supreme Court, which I have done on occasion, so you're welcome to join in, that they've been politicized or this or that. It does not appear that there was any buddy who felt differently, because generally when they do, there'll be a notation on the order that says Justice X, Y, or Z voted that they should. That what that means is, and as we're taping this on Christmas Eve morning, Sunday, last night, Saturday, Trump's lawyers in the district court filed their opening brief, which was arguing basically that the president has immunity for acts that were done during his presidency and that the courts cannot intervene, or it's a violation of separation of powers for the courts to insinuate themselves. Now, the Court of the Appeal, the D.C. District Court of Appeal, setting all of this up, the district court had a March, or still has technically a March trial date. Jack Smith had gone to the U.S. Supreme Court because he realizes, and I think accurately so, that the district court had paused the proceedings because immunity was going to go up to be decided. They don't want to wait because even with the compressed schedule by the appellate court, the circuit court, and the compressed schedule means they've set an oral argument date of January 9, I believe. The filing date by Trump was last night. The special counsel has to come in, I think it's by New Year's Eve. That's a very compressed set of timeline for them. But they recognize that even if they get a decision that immunity doesn't apply, that will then be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the March date will be in jeopardy. And so that's why they asked the U.S. Supreme Court to get involved. One of the things that I do not see discussed in here is why or on what basis does the March date need to hold? Because why is it that this is the question? And I'm speaking as a defense lawyer who has been there when the government wants to always jump the line. Why does the fact that the special counsel waited a number of years to bring these charges, then gets a trial date of March over the defense objection, so that it will be, by the way, March is also when the Super Tuesday is, when the primaries are. It's a presidential election.
Yep.
Why do they need, what is so magical about doing this before the election, except that you open yourself up to the fact that it's a political calculation? You've often heard me say that the federal system moves at a glacial pace. And I understand that there are sort of rocket dockets, so to speak. But what is so magical about a March trial date in a case that has some of the most significant issues that the special counsel has argued and that the defense has argued? Well, we got to hold this March date, or we got to get a date that's going to be before the election. That sure tells you something, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only calculus that really makes sense is the fact that they're attempting to get this trial, all the way in process and hopefully resolved before the actual election, so that it will inform, the minds of voters. And that's a tough calculus to bring when you realize, that that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the upcoming election. And as you noted, it was well over, 2 years that the charges were brought from the previous election.
And that argument is one that I always run up against in many cases, which is, why does the prosecution get to sit and wait and investigate on their own time period, then file a case or bring a case within the statute of limitations, and then basically tell the defense, on your mark and say, go? We took years to investigate something, but we want a trial within 120 days. Why is that? What kind of fairness, fundamental fairness and due process, either substantive or procedural, does that implicate? So I will say it once, I'll say it again. This process has been fraught with danger for the precedent that it sets. Supreme Court did exactly what I thought they would do, which is say, no, you don't get to jump the line, go to the district court, and we'll deal with this accordingly. And by the way, not a single, unless I missed something, not a single justice thought otherwise.
No.
Now, take that against that backdrop, the Colorado Supreme Court case, which is also, I cannot imagine that this won't get reversed. This may be the single worst move by the Democrats that I can imagine is bringing this to the Colorado Supreme Court I believe that all 7 justices are Democratic. Still 4-3, removing Trump from the ballot. Don't we have something that even Gavin Newsom pushed back on this?
Yeah, we sure do. We sure do. And this is in light of, you're right here that Gavin Newsom did push back. And this is in light of his lieutenant governor jumping on and saying that California should explore all legal options to follow suit and to remove Donald Trump from the ballots in California. And these are some comments by Gavin Newsom, I believe, surrounding one of the Republican debates that he was commentating around.
Governor, what do you think is going to be the takeaway after this debate from the American people?
I think it will be clear that Trump comes out the dominant force after this debate. I mean, this is the XFL. This is JV. I mean, and honestly, this is maybe a vice presidential debate. These guys are getting lapped by Donald Trump. It's not even close. It's not even interesting. And I think what's most interesting to me is, do they recognize that? Or are they actually going to show up and run against the guy that's in the way of their prospects to be the nominee? It's a zero-sum game. It's a binary choice at the end of the day. It's not a ranked choice voting. So either these guys come after the front runner and distinguish themselves, or otherwise they're wasting everybody's time. And I say this with love and respect. There's a reason some of the advertising is being discounted for this debate. People don't even want to tune in because they know that fundamentally.
It's he's right. He said it's the XFL. It's JV, I think is what he said.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. And by the way, the idea that you're going to remove somebody from the presidential ballot. Once again, I'll say that we're not running for county sheriff. The presidential ballot, because of what they're saying is they're making a finding in Colorado that he inspired an insurrection. You can believe that. You can say the evidence is overwhelming. Guess what? The courts did not adjudicate that where he had the ability to defend himself in a criminal proceeding, by the way. He has not been charged with insurrection. So don't collapse the January 6th prosecution that we just talked about and the immunity issues that we just talked about. He's not charged with insurrection in that case.
Not only that, not only that, but lower court had found that the 14th Amendment, Section 3, which is being invoked here, the lower court had found that doesn't necessarily maybe even apply to a presidential candidate. So the fact that this is coming in this situation, and by the way, I would encourage anyone, Mark, if you're interested, I have it here and I can read it, but I would encourage everyone to go read the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It's one paragraph.
You should put it up because it's interesting.
Okay, I will. Let's see here. It's I'll put it up and then I'll read it. Let's go. Where is it here? Is this it? That's it. All right. So no person shall be a senator, representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil, military, under the United States or any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive of or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may. By
the way, look at the first sentence. Shall be a senator or representative in Congress. They didn't put president or vice president.
Correct. And also aid or comfort.
That because they said elector.
Yes.
So they understood that.
Exactly. And I also it jumps out to me, given aid or comfort to enemies thereof. It's like, well, what is that? I don't know. That's a tough one to really parse out. So Colorado's.
Let me tell you of the law of unintended consequences here, Colorado. Number one, Trump was not going to Colorado. So if this is a political calculation or stunt where the judiciary is jumping in, it is nonsense, because what is going to end up happening, I'll give the over and under is 45 days, where if this is allowed to stand, red states are going to start removing Biden.
Texas has already talked about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't even understand what I get. It may give people some kind of visceral satisfaction to have this done. Beat him at the ballot box. What the hell are you doing? All you do is make his supporters more energized. This is, if it's a presidential election, if you want to beat him at the ballot box.
And by the way, Gavin Newsom has said exactly that. We don't have video of it, but he has said in interviews with reporters that in California, we beat them at the ballot box. And I think that that's a very reasonable take. I listen to, a lot of commentators on both sides of the aisle to try to stay informed for this show and just in general for my life. And I have seen many on the left saying that they believe that this is going to be a 9-0 Supreme Court decision. I would say the most pessimistic view I have seen from those on the left is 7-2 to quash this. I mean, everyone seems to agree that one way or another, the Supreme Court is going to stop this. And I think that that's in the best interest of the nation. And I think it's in the best interest of the left, honestly, because if this is allowed to stand, then our elections are going to be wildly different going forward.
Well, and I will tell you also, the Supreme Court granted cert on the January 6th. So some of those prosecutions on obstruction, wait and see. Read the petition for cert if you want to see where they're headed. The Supreme Court is going to deal with this in a way that I think is not surprising. And I echo your view. I don't see at best handicapping this, how it can be anything but somewhere between 7-2 and 9-0 on getting rid of this thing. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. He hasn't been convicted. He hasn't been charged. They had a district court proceeding that he arguably participated in, but at the same time, it's a real issue. It's a significant issue. You can't start destroying due process because you want to get a result that you are afraid you can't achieve in the normal course of business, which is an election. And all you do is give oxygen to those who say this is the real election interference.
Well, we will be watching it very closely. I will give a peek behind the curtain. Mark and I were sitting in a meeting for something having absolutely nothing to do with reasonable doubt a couple of days ago, and the news hit that the Supreme Court was not going to be weighing in on this and not going to be getting into the fray of Jack Smith's request. And Mark stood up and walked across the room while someone else was talking, giving a presentation that he should have been listening to, and shoved his phone in my face and said, "Look, we knew it. We knew it. People should be listening."
By the way, that was during a proceeding. That was actually a legal proceeding. Gary was there assisting. So you've accurately captured it.
Hey, everybody. What's up? It's Gina Grad. And when you're searching for the perfect piece of jewelry, it can be hard to find a brand you trust. Alex and Ani has been creating meaningful jewelry for over 20 years, designing pieces that connect you with all of life's important moments. With an emphasis on value, there is truly something for everyone. They've recently launched their everyday collection. I could not love it more. These pieces are made from stainless steel and an advanced water-resistant plating method that doesn't tarnish. It has the look of real gold. It's beautiful. I love these pieces because they feel so classic, but they have so much versatility. Alex and Ani are also featuring some gorgeous pieces that I have right here, like Black Lotus, this gorgeous Black Lotus charm necklace, and their Stay Wild pendant, and their Wings of Protection necklace that have a classic and vintage feel. See that? And of course, you can't forget their signature bangle bracelets, which I'm also wearing. And I have a lot of their stuff. I have the numerology bracelets. I have the hula dancer to commemorate a meaningful trip I took to Hawaii. From classic to bold statement pieces, Alex and Ani makes it easy to sprinkle your personality into each piece or make a truly meaningful gift for someone you care about. Meanwhile, you can take comfort in knowing that you're shopping with a socially conscious brand, as Alex and Ani has donated over $60 million to nonprofits worldwide, connecting fashion and philanthropy in an easy, fun, affordable way. Right now, Alex and Ani is offering our audience 20% off. So check their gorgeous collection out at alexandani.com and use the promo code MIDAS. That's MEIDAS at alexandani.com. Use that promo code at checkout for 20% off your order. Come and get something beautiful.
By the way, also, I've seen people already. It hasn't even been 10 hours, 11 hours, maybe longer since Trump filed his immunity argument in the D.C. circuit, and it's already been panned as an amateur piece of work. The argument is juvenile, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to tell you right now that you haven't read it if you say that in its entirety, because there is a legitimate argument. It is a colorable argument. And prognosticating, again, it's an argument that I think is going to be seriously entertained by SCOTUS. I won't make a prediction as to how that breaks down, because I do not think that will be 9-0. I think there are legitimate arguments on both sides, but there is, and this harkens back to when I was listening to the arguments on the gag order. You remember that, Gary? We
absolutely.
talked about it. Same lawyer, I believe, the ex-solicitor general of one of the southern states, was making the arguments then. If I had just relied on what was being reported as opposed to listening to the audio, you would have thought this guy was Bumpelstiltskin. But having listened to that audio and having read his paperwork, he is accomplished. He knows what he's doing, and his arguments are not frivolous in the least.
Yeah, there was a lot of fervor on Twitter and Instagram in the moments after that filing was made public last night, and I agree. To actually read the filing is that you would be much better informed to read the filing than to read the commentary that came out around it in the very quick moments after it was released.
By the way, it's an intellectually interesting argument.
I agree.
If you like the law. I mean, it is significant. It is, to my mind, it's a more fascinating and intellectually challenging argument than the, speaking of 8-0 or 9-0 opinions, than Jones v. Clinton, which was in the context of the civil case. This goes to the core of constitutional principles of separations of power. This is not a frivolous argument. This is an argument that deserves serious consideration and serious discussion, as opposed to the idea of just dismissing it as the way it's been characterized, and to some degree at the district court level, is that it's a get out of jail free card for eternity of a president. That is not the way it has been presented. That is not that is a conflation of basically two arguments. What it is pinned on, the argument is pinned on, is that an act of the president while in office, and then the subsequent prosecution, absent a finding of guilt in impeachment. Remember that, because you have to read all of these sections together. Absent, and in this case, an acquittal by the Senate, that is what immunizes a subsequent prosecution after you leave office. Understand that argument, because when I listen to people, they tend to not give it the kind of depth and breadth of nuance that is there.
That's what I find too. I find with a lot of the commentary that I've seen surrounding this, it feels like people have read one out of the 5 pieces that you need to read to give an accurate and intelligent analysis of this situation. And I understand why that's easy and why that's something that's appealing if you're on social media and you're trying to garner clicks and you're trying to get people to follow you. But to read all of the pieces of this, it is an interesting intellectual exercise. And it is something I agree with you. I won't opine on, what the final tally is going to be from the Supreme Court, but it's fascinating to think about and to watch and see what they're going to do.
Right. Because you can't have the argument is, this isn't where Trump had murdered somebody on the White House grounds and was convicted of such, but the prosecution was stymied because he was president at the time. That's not what we're talking about. They're saying that his speech and his argument that he was ensuring electoral integrity while he was president, his speech, understand that is protected, and that you cannot absent the Senate, and I'll say it again, the Senate convicting him, which they did not. And I recognize that the senators made the argument, Mitch McConnell first and foremost, well, we'll leave this to the criminal courts to decide. That's why they were going to acquit. Well, if that was the case, somebody should have pushed back on Mitch McConnell at the time and said, no, that's a dereliction of your duty because you're going to immunize him by virtue of the textual reading of the Constitution if you acquit him, because he's going to be once in jeopardy for that act. Otherwise, you can't, after the fact, after the person is no longer president, then have the courts come in and second guess what was happening after the fact for something that was done and maintained that it was related to the functions of being president while they were president. That's a wholly different argument than, oh, he gets immunization for anything he did for the rest of his life. That is a caricature of what the argument is.
Well, we'll be watching and we'll be enjoying the holidays all at the same time, as I'm sure all of our listeners will be. I'm sure that many out there are not necessarily paying as close attention to this as Reasonable Doubt listeners, but for everyone who is listening to us, we will be watching and we will be back with another update sooner than later. Mark, thank you so much for your time. Merry Christmas Eve, and have an excellent holiday with your friends and family.
Thank you, Gary. Merry Christmas to you and yours. And you've got it's the greatest age to have Christmas, so enjoy it.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mark. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.